What if I told you that most musicians have been sold a broken vision as to what's required to actually get results in their music business? And one of the biggest culprits of this problem is branding. This is something that gurus on the internet love to talk about. I'm sure Gary Vee has got literally hundreds of hours of him screaming about how important it is to have a personal brand. And I acknowledge it's important to get the branding side of your business down. We've talked about how to do that on this channel. But let me ask you, if you've been relying on branding alone to build your business, how has that been going for you? See, what most artists are finding is that there's more to the game than just branding. Branding is one element of it, right? We've talked about branding is really you identifying yourself and how you want to present yourself into this business. And then marketing is how you use your messaging to connect with your fans and bridge them over to where you're at, right? And the branding serves a role in that, but it's not the entire business, right? Branding as we know it, and what we most people associate with what branding is and how it works and how you get all these people to know about you, comes from Madison Avenue advertising back in the 50s and even a little bit before that, where they had these huge budgets that they were using with big giant corporations like Heinz Ketchup or a big giant steel company that built bridges or whatever. And they would literally have millions upon millions of dollars to waste trying out these ad agencies' advertisements, because these ad agencies were very much focused on like, what's the big picture? What's the cool ad? Think about most of the ads on the Super Bowl, right? How many ads are just, whoa, look at this cool conceptual thing, as opposed to just getting people to buy the dang thing, right? There's so much of branding nowadays that is left over from this old, outdated mindset. There was an old school marketer or copywriter, really. His name was David Ogilvy. And he worked with all these big companies. He's like a real life madman, Don Draper type, right? He worked inside all these big ad agencies and saw the waste that was inside of it. And even he, at the end of his career, came to basically say, these people don't know what the heck they are doing, right? So it's not just awareness. David Ogilvy understood that it was about action. You can't just get people aware of you. You have to get them to act in relationship to whatever it is you have to offer, okay? So Gary Vee is all about attention. He's like Madison Avenue 2.0. He's all about branding, and he has an ad agency, and it's basically all image-based institutional image advertising, where that's all good, but there's a huge problem inside of that. And that problem is the conversion problem, because awareness doesn't always equal engagement, and engagement doesn't always equal sales. That's the line of thread. That's the through line that they're trying to tell you, like, oh, okay, so if you just get awareness, people will engage and then people will buy, right? That's not how it works, because if you think about it like this, passive selling will yield passive buying. Passive selling cannot yield active buying, because you're passively every now and then, because put it this way, most artists or musicians are passively selling whatever it is they have to offer. They've got a merch store, but they never talk about it. They've got an email list, but they never talk about it. They got a Patreon or a fan club, and they never talk about it. They try to be passive. They think, just because I put it up on my website and it's viewable by somebody who may just so happen to visit my website, that's not going to lead to the results that we think it is. And it's passive selling, because we're trying to avoid the action of selling. I know how it is for musicians. Selling, we feel like weird about it. We're like, I'm an artist, selling is weird. I'm like, have you seen the artists that go out, I think it's called busking, where you're out there on the corner and you're out there playing your music and you're selling. It's not like, hello, Billy Mays here type selling, but it's still selling. Whenever I can go into a long diatribe I have before about like, whenever you were a kid and you were like, Mom, I want to get this kind of Captain Crunch. It's this new Captain Crunch flavor. I want to make sure I get this. She's like, oh my God, okay, you can have it. You just sold her, right? It was high pressure sales too. Yeah. Most people are like, oh wow, I didn't realize I used high pressure sales. You did when you wanted your mom to buy you that Reese's peanut butter cup at the checkout line at the grocery store. Oh yes, you used high pressure sales. Everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about too. Like, Mom, please, I'll eat it after dinner. Okay, I'll eat it after dinner. Can I get it then? We would hard sell all the time as kids to our parents, like crazy. But anyway, passive selling yields passive buying. So the only way really to get people to buy your thing is, yeah, sure, they have to know it exists. That's the first level of this. After they have awareness, you have to cultivate interest, right? You have to cultivate desire so that they can actually want to make a decision, and then you get them to act, right? This is the old famous AIDA little acronym. Attention or awareness, interest, decision, action. Get them to make a decision, get them to act now. That's what is actually going to lead to more sales. Not this like, yeah, I exist. Yeah, I exist. The only thing that you're communicating there is that you exist. And you're waiting on the tiny, tiny percentage. The legendary salesman Chet Holmes talked about 3% of any given market is wanting to buy something right now. So when you do passive selling, you're relying on that 3% of the market to know who you are at the right time, as opposed to some other artist who's enticed them in more with just more than just branding, right? They'll be taking that market share. People who are in that 3% who are ready to buy right now, they'll buy from those people because they've cultivated more than just a general awareness about them. They've built a connection. That's the thing. Content is about connection, not just awareness. So a lot of times we'll sit there and we'll just boost posts. Please don't do that, by the way. Please stop boosting posts. Like, every time I see that, it kind of hurts my heart a little bit because you're kind of just giving money to these platforms for vanity metrics most of the time, right? Because we want to make sure that a piece of content, just a little aside here, you want to make sure content is converting before you boost it, right? The worst thing you could do is say, hey, my video only has 5 views after a week. Let me boost it so the views go up. What you're doing is boosting a non-performing post. What you would be better off doing is posting 12 pieces of content within 2 weeks and then seeing which piece of content got the most views and then boosting that post. Because now you're boosting a winner as opposed to trying to force feed a loser down people's throats on their feed. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so when it comes to content, people think like, well, Dax, no, the branding is important because it involves content. I'm like, no. Branding, like I talked about, is just the internal stuff over here. Who are you? Who are you? No, sorry. That's what branding is all about. But when you start doing content, now you're focusing on marketing, which is who they are. What are the stories and things they need to hear to resonate with you, right? What do they need to see and hear from you to know that you are the exact thing they've been looking for? Do you understand what I'm saying? So you have to look at it from more of this active versus passive approach. If you want passive results, passively sell. But if you want active results, you have to actively sell, because I can guarantee most artists in here, you guys can drop a comment and I can say the same thing. I've gone through this experience. Most of these things I'm talking to you about are from personal experience and working with clients. It's if you passively sell, you'll check the Shopify and maybe you'll get a sale every 3 months, 2 months, maybe 6 months, right? But if you build up a connection with your audience, that's more than just superficial level awareness, now you can start to drive action, right? And they actually desire the action. So that kind of takes me to the third thing that we're talking about here today, what is the alternative approach, right? We understand that branding and awareness is different from action. So what processes can we study as opposed to just studying branding all the time and trying to become branding masters like we're Coca-Cola and have $40 billion to work with, you know what I'm saying? Instead of doing that, we should go view ourselves more in the direct marketing, what David Ogilvy credited the direct response marketers, right? He said all these bloated advertising agencies that are spending millions of dollars of these clients' money, and a client would be the businesses that are like, hey, give me some cool ads, right? They would take millions of those dollars knowing full well that there's no way to track if their ads are really working. You know, they put up a billboard and they're just like, I hope your, Heinz ketchup sales go up. Woo, it worked, right? So loose. There was no tracking, and these agencies understood that it's like as long as you could sell them in the meeting on the ad, it didn't really matter how effective the ad was because they would get their fees no matter what, right? So that's the origins of branding and spending a whole bunch of money on these very convoluted conceptual ads, where David Ogilvy got out of that and realized that the ones who were actually making results happen in business and getting consumers to act were the direct response marketers. And so, like we've mentioned, branding is the long-term impression. So you do want to have somewhat of a branding strategy to give people long-term impressions of you after seeing you a consistent amount of times with your content. Yes, from a 10,000 foot overview, they're going to see you and have an association with you. That's the branding aspect of it. But the individual pieces of content serve a purpose. They're not just purely awareness. They're getting people to follow, to join your email list. They're getting people to take specific actions. That's the whole point of direct response, is getting people to get a response. So that could be opting in, that could be buying, that could be following or commenting. But you have to give some sort of trackability to this. So you can track, okay, this video was trying to drive this action. Out of this many viewers, here's how many people did it, right? You need to be able to track these kind of things to understand what works and what doesn't, or else you're just like those Madison Avenue agencies and you're just walking blind and you have no idea what you're doing. Now, direct response marketing kind of follows three core principles. So instead of long-term impressions, we're looking to get short-term action right now, okay? So, I mean, this makes sense. I mean, if you're an artist or musician and you don't have a huge budget, you can't rely on this just constant drip of like, oh, I'm eventually going to sell it to them, they'll see me enough times. You can't rely on that. In the early days, and really through the whole entirety of your career, sure, you can leverage branding the way the big stars are towards the end of your career when you've built up some star power. But in the beginning, when you don't have the star power, you have to you rely on your direct response skills. And so what are these three things that you need to do? Number one, we need to get fan attention. Okay? So the content is there to get the attention, not just for attention's sake, but attention because, listen, I'm going to tell you about something that's really going to connect with you, right? The songs are emotional. We're working on the emotional level of fan psychology, okay? So we need to figure out how our music can tap into something that they care about naturally. What is something in your music that you talk about, you sing about, you rap about, that relates to the experience of your dream ideal fan? And how can you most easily bridge them to that gap, right? So if you have an experience that you can draw, sorry, I'm getting real deep on you here. You have a piece of content, right? And what you're trying to do is take your song and figure out what's the generalized emotion that my dream fan could totally relate to and feel based on what they're going through. Like if you wrote a song about a specific event in your life, if they haven't gone through that specific event in your life, marketing the song from that perspective is kind of a waste because there's a tiny percentage of people who have gone through the exact situation you've gone through. However, if I can look at an individual instance in my life and extrapolate the overarching concept, right? So for example, my singer Gabriel was in a position where someone broke into his house and he was protecting his mom and his siblings that were in the closet, but he had a knife and he was like thinking to himself, I may have to stab somebody. Never been in that position before, right? He was thinking to himself, oh my God, like I may have to stab somebody and I have to be ready to do it. I can't hesitate or that could mean like danger for my family. Like I got to protect them. Nothing ended up happening. But that mindset left an impression on him because he was like, wow, I actually had to become the type of person in a moment who could do that when I previously did not know that was a part of me. Basically, he kind of, if you're looking at Jungian psychology, sorry, I'm a psychology nerd, he sort of discovered his own shadow a little bit. There was a part of him that was darker than he was aware of that he didn't give conscious thought of. The shadow was unconscious, right? So he ignored that, and as a consequence of finally being exposed to that side of him, it kind of shocked him a little bit. So instead of us trying to get people to relate to the song based on, have you ever been in a situation where you had to defend your family with a knife? Hardly anybody is going to relate to that, right? But if I was like, have you ever seen a part of yourself that you didn't know existed and it kind of frightened you? Now we're touching on a general emotion that is still potent. It's not cliche general, doesn't mean anything, blah, 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 blah. It's something that's very potent and can tie directly into someone else's experience. Do you see what I'm saying? So you have to look at it from that perspective of what is the generalized message I can put out to attract my fans' attention so that I can communicate my song with them. Now, in that moment that you've got their attention, we need to drive some kind of action to get them into our ecosystem, get them into our text list, get them into our email list, our free Facebook group, our free Instagram broadcast thingy channel, whatever, some kind of action to take them from social media fan to you care about this enough to take the next step. Join my email list. Boom, now we move them into our ecosystem. That's the second sort of pillar of direct response, right? We've got them into our ecosystem. And then number 3, sell consistently. That's the toughest one for everybody, I know. Selling consistently. Now, what does consistently mean? Does that mean every day? Not necessarily, no. You might annoy some people if you were selling them something every single day. But fans can often tolerate more than you give them credit for. You can email them every day. I recommend emailing them every day once they join to walk them through like a sort of email sequence that you produce. We've talked about those different ones in many other videos. But you take them through these automated sequences. And so they're getting constant touches from you. And hopefully we're telling engaging, curiosity-built stories that are just telling about you. Right? We're not pushing, we're not trying to sell anything. We're building that connection deeper. So in the second pillar, you got them in the ecosystem and you're going to be reaching out to them in a way that you're building that rapport so that when you do sell, you're not just some dude or chick who's putting them up into the email list and immediately trying to sell your t-shirt, immediately trying to sell your album and all this kind of stuff. They're going to be like, oh, that's what this email list is all about. It's all about just getting pitched at. And so I'm not going to open the emails. I mean, think about it. When you sign up for an email rewards thing at a restaurant or a grocery store, every time they email you, they're trying to sell you something. And so how often do you end up just swiping left on those emails? 99% of the time. It takes the one company who you actually care about to send you a deal that actually is attractive for you to go, okay, well, I'll open up that email, right? So if you set the precedent that as soon as they join your email, you're just going to be pitching at them consistently every single day, they're most likely not going to open the emails. Their defenses are going to go up. However, if as soon as they join, it's like, here's some cool free stuff. I just want to make sure you got your free stuff. Hey, here's a story about me. You build that story deeper and deeper and go further down the story. Now you're in a position where they know more about you than any of the fans that are on social media. That gives them this exclusive knowledge. So when people comment something, they can comment like, no, you don't understand. I understand. I know his story or their story. They went through this and this and this. Right? You see what I'm saying? So like those fans who are in your email ecosystem or your text SMS ecosystem, they will literally, by the way, I need to make a distinction. If you're doing text, don't text people every day, even if it's the welcome sequence. That's a more intimate piece of contact information. You may want to do that once a month or in promotional times, maybe 1 or 2 days in a row, maybe 3 days in a row, and then stop, right? That one's very sensitive. But I'm speaking more email. That's where more of my expertise is. So as you're selling things to them, you're doing it in this way where you're providing value, story about yourself, and then selling. Now, there's a way to do it, and that I teach my clients how to do, where you're not just telling them a story like, hey, and then this happened, and then I did this, and then this. You know how kids tell stories when they come up to you? And they just kind of go on the endless and this story training. You're just like, okay, I was with you, but now I'm so far. That's how a lot of people tell stories. Do not do that. You want to tell your story in a way that relates to emotions they can pull from. Think of my example with the song and the meaning of it, right? Look at your story about how you overcame trials and tribulations to get where you're at today and figure out the messages that relate to their experience, things they've gone through as well, okay? So those are like the 3 pillars of direct response, right? Get that attention, get their attention, their interest, get them into the ecosystem so that they actually learn more about you and you build that rapport and that affinity between artist and fan deeper. And then we eventually sell them something. And yes, we do in fact sell them. We give them reasons to buy right now. When we finally make the sell, we don't go passive on it and go, here it is, you can check it out if you want. No, we're like, here's this thing. If you're a fan of ours, here's why you want this, right? And here's what we're going to include for free because we're going to sweeten the pot just a little bit. And just if you don't love it, in 60 days, email us, we'll send you all your money back and you can keep it. Now all of a sudden you've got something they're like, oh, this is pretty nice, but is this offer always going to be around? And then you're like, we're only doing this for the first X amount of people that take the offer, and then we're changing the offer completely. Now they're going to want to take action, right? So you can create real scarcity. And also, if you have physical merchandise, you by default have real scarcity because you only printed a certain number of those items, right? So you can leverage that if you have physical merchandise, you know? Let's say you printed 20 shirts and you've got 15 left. It would serve you well to let them know you only have 15 left, and once they are gone, they are gone. Okay? That's a very non-pushy way to get scarcity going, is if once it's gone, it's gone. Because that's just a statement of fact. That's like saying, once I breathe air, I've breathed. Once I inhale, I inhale. It's like, once they're gone, they are gone. So you're not being super pushy, but it is very persuasive because it does let them know that, like, once it's gone, that is a final thing. Is not coming back, right? So I know a lot of people have their weird trepidations about selling, and I get it, right? But I can tell you something. Having grown up around salespeople, my mother and father were both furniture salespeople. My mother actually ended up becoming a store manager and managing over salespeople and sales managers. So I've grown up around thousands of salespeople. And yes, every now and then you'll come across someone who's kind of the archetype of the salesperson that we don't want to engage with. But by and large, there are so many fantastic human beings that are out there doing sales as a profession. And so I think as a society, we only see the tiny sliver of people that do really wrong things. And so that's what we associate the entire profession with. And that leaves a bad taste in our mouth because it's uncomfortable for some people to admit. But as a musician, you are a salesperson. You're selling your music, and you're selling your brand, and you're selling, period, right? You're selling them to click the link to go sign up for the email. You're selling them to click the link that's in the email to go buy the thing. You're selling them to buy the thing because that's a great offer that they need, and you don't want them to miss out and be the one fan who doesn't have this really cool thing. You know, like, you have to get them to take action. Taking action is essential. And here's another thing I want you to remember. You may think like, well, I'm just trying so hard to, sell them a t-shirt, right? What's the big deal? How am I helping their life if I'm selling them a t-shirt or I'm selling them a water bottle or whatever? You have to think about it like this. The value in what we do as being an artist, right, or a musician, is not always 100% intrinsically tied to what the physical item is. Like, I've got a poster in here that I got to send off to a fan. We actually have to get it signed tonight, and then we're sending it off to him. But the value of that poster is not just in the material of the poster. Just like the value of the t-shirt is not in the material of the t-shirt. It's in what the t-shirt represents in a relationship between fan and artist. Keep in mind, so many fans, if I went into their closet right now, there would be all the different color t-shirts they have and then just a thick wall of black band t-shirts and artist t-shirts that they've gotten at different venues. Who can relate to that? Give me a comment there if you can relate to that. I know my closet looks like, oh, look at all the wonderful color. Just black t-shirts. But like, someone would come up and say like, oh, look, another black t-shirt. Like, oh, great, another black t-shirt. I'm like, do you think that the fact that I have a closet full of black t-shirts has ever prevented me from buying a black t-shirt? Come on now. It wouldn't have gotten that big if that was the case, right? So it's not that people are like, I know some artists are like, my merch is kind of lame. Like, we just have a black t-shirt with like a white logo across it. I'm like, my first t-shirt was a white shirt with a black logo across it. That is not why people buy it. Sometimes you can get away. I know I've given away some great advice about make your merch as universally attractive as possible. So even if they didn't see you, they would think it's cool. But even if you're not in a position to create a design like that, you can create connections with your shows and your performance that makes the fact that the shirt is basic of no importance. Because the shirt represents an experience, a memory, a feeling that they had. And so when they pick up the shirt, they get to travel back in time and experience those emotions over and over and over again. That is why people buy your merchandise. And so even if it's through an online experience, getting that thing from the artist, and especially too, if you're able to, this is why like I'm kind of a fan of print by demand, but I'm also not. So if you get some print by demand orders, make sure you use a company where you can see the information of the person ordering so that you could potentially send them a letter, right? And that letter could, drive up more personalization to it. You can add a little bit more to it than this sterile kind of, hey, you bought a t-shirt, and that same kind of thing. With the print by demand store, you don't get as much control over the user experience. They're just going through the interface of the print by demand store. So it's kind of important to try to personalize it a little bit. So I would send them like a letter, right? Stamps are not very expensive. So you can go send a letter that's literally just like, you're so awesome. Thank you so much for supporting us. And as a treat, here's a $5 off coupon, right? It's just something like that. Something to give some personal experience. I remember when I bought like a Metallica bundle and they sent in like a signed poster or something for free. Now, granted, it was like photocopy signed. It wasn't like actually signed. But still, I was like, whoa, it makes the experience when you get it in the mail like, whoa, I got this cool little thing. I'm really a big fan of receiving boxes. Boxes are dope. Like you get a whole customized box that's got confetti in it and there's a t-shirt in there. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, right? Only a few bands are willing to go that extra mile. But that increases the sellability of it when you do go the extra mile. Just saying. So selling is winning in this business. There's no way of avoiding selling. So we have to, as artists, stop pushing back with the selling and just start leaning into it. Okay? So I hope this video has helped you guys as far as looking at the pitfalls of branding and looking at branding only as our solution and how we can look at direct response as a way to counterbalance that, especially when we don't have infinite budgets to work with. We want to figure out how to maximize the budget we have right now to get responses, to get action from our fans now. Okay, so if you enjoyed this video and you got some value, hit the subscribe button, the like button, notification bell, all that kind of good stuff. Also, if you'd like some one-on-one help implementing direct response systems inside of your music business, click the link that's in the description. We have a link where you can apply for a coaching call to see if it would be a good fit to work together. Either way, whether that's a good fit for you or not, I just hope that you got a ton of value from this video, and I will see you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.